So a very good morning, good afternoon to everyone. Can I extend a very warm welcome to today's first in the series of our IACC Shorts, Defining Reality Around Sales. Now, due to the large number of joining us today, we have put you all on mute. And would I ask you kindly use the chat box at the bottom of your screens for any questions to the panel. We will be recording the session, which I will forward to you all later today. Now, let me introduce you to today's facilitator, IACC CEO, Mark Cooper. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you very much, Kate, and good morning, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. I absolutely look forward to this session today and our virtual instructor-led discussion as given to me and coined by Cindy Novotny. I will hope that we'll have a great, productive 40 minutes. First of all, I recognise that we've all perhaps moved past the immediacy of handling the fallout from our events in March and April. And as we just about take a gasp of breath given that fallout, we're now moving into considering our May and our summer events and beyond. And we may well be able to help each other as fellow sales professionals in the IACC community by sharing the approaches that we take, by managing the changing needs and the changing behaviours of our clients. So in today's discussion, we look forward to your participation. Kate is eagerly looking at the chat box, waiting for those questions that will come up. Now, we've chosen 4 topics to cover in 40 minutes. The first 2, we're absolutely going to be discussing the aspects that are relevant to our current sales environment, addressing contracts, agreements, postponements, force majeures, and all of those things that are really relevant today. The following 2 is where we'll start to look forward. We'll be more forward-looking in talking about how we can protect and strengthen our client relationships. We may not realize it now, but now is our absolute opportunity to distance ourselves from our competitors. And even if we felt we had strong relationships in the past, we can strengthen those even further if we play our cards right. As I mentioned, please remember to ask questions as we go through the session. The one thing that I can promise you is that if we do not cover all of your questions, or if we cannot answer everything as accurately as we would like to today, we are going to carry on. We will meet again next week. We will arrange some virtual coffee mornings. We will be able to get ourselves around the virtual table to address these. So I can promise you that no question is not worth asking today. So without any further ado, I am delighted to welcome our guest panelists. First of all, I'd like to welcome Katie Schultz. Katie is Director of Sales and Marketing at the Chubb Hotel and Conference Center, just outside of Philadelphia. Hi, Katie. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
And also President of MPI Philadelphia chapter. Second, I'd like to welcome...
Thank you, Mark.
My pleasure. Second, I'd like to welcome Cindy Novotny, Managing Partner of Master Connection Associates, sales guru, and part of the IACC community since probably the Woodlands Conference Center in Texas. Is that right, Cindy? I won't try and put a date against it. But,
that's from the very beginning, yes.
From the very beginning. So welcome, Cindy. Delighted to have you join us today from California, and a not so sunny California, we've learned. Maribeth Grandpre, VP of Global Accounts for CSN Networks. Maribeth is our heavyweight because she is representing the whole of the global meeting planner community out there. Maribeth has been that person on the other end of the phone trying to navigate the client needs with the venue needs and getting the solutions in place. So we'll be bringing an important perspective from the meeting planner community. Good morning, Maribeth.
Good morning, thank you.
And then last but definitely not least, I would like to welcome Nancy Lindemer, Director of Sales and Marketing, Destination Hotels and Resorts, and also our President of the IACC Americas chapter, and also a Vice President of the IACC Global Board of Directors as well. Nancy, good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, what I'd like to do to begin with today is just recap on the 4 topics that we have set in place. First topic, we're going to look at changes to existing bookings, cancellations and postponements. Then we're going to head into how we handle those contract addendum requests with all that required flexibility that we've been asked to cover. And we'll be looking at then communicating with our clients. We'll be getting some advice from this group on how and when we can communicate with our clients. And then last but not least, we're going to look at the possible approaches to reallocating and training people to be able to fulfill the sales roles that we're going to need in the future. So if I may begin, I would like to start with Maribeth. Give me one moment as well. We've got one microphone that is playing tricks with us, so I'm going to attempt to locate that, and then we'll head into the first question.
Quiet the noise.
Okay. I think we've located it. Cindy, I put you on to mute just for the moment. As soon as I hear your lips move, I will unmute you. Okay, so our first question today to Maribeth. You know, as a meeting planner, Maribeth, managing meetings, managing your clients' experiences, can you share with us some of the experiences that you're having when dealing with venues? And I mean both positive and also examples where maybe the venue stance has caused challenges for you.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, as Mark had mentioned, we're with CSN Connects. Jenny Klein is on as well. And again, we are the conduit between the conference center, hotel, and the customer. And I think what we're primarily hearing is a lot of loyalty. I do want to start off with a positive, because I think that these customers are in a very tricky situation right now, as our hoteliers and our conference centers are. What we're hearing from the customers are, you know, there is some fear, there is some worry. I think that the landscape was a lot different 4 weeks ago, as we can all attest to. Early March was reactive, short-term cancellations that happened very quickly, sometimes for the week, within the week, or the next week after. And then, you know, 2 weeks ago, I would say it was more, you know, we're looking at, can we postpone an April, May, or June program and put it into the fall, which, you know, again, not the greatest, but a better story than canceling altogether. And currently now we have been hearing a bit more of potential postponements in the summer timeframe to keep hopefully in 2020, or to move out to next year. You know, with that said, that's understood. We're seeing with corporate that for the most part, they're able to take that, we can take that deposit from the property, hold it, and then with the postponement and the rescheduling to the fall, that's fine. We're rolling it over. What I am seeing too, and I know some of you as property managers, you know, have seen, and salespeople have seen, you know, several association meetings. We've seen a little bit of that, in that the associations sometimes aren't able to take that money that they've allocated, registration fees for 2020, and roll it over. So that's been one area that has been a little bit of a frustration, I think, from the meeting planner and the hotel, to try to come to an even terms on that. I think that there is a little bit of frustration as well that many of these properties, as you all know, are closed, are not in operation right now, skeleton crews that are on right now. So it's been hard trying to get to the powers that be to make the decisions for the rollover, for the postponement, for the potential cancellation. You're having, you know, general managers or DOSMs, you know, run a lot of this, where many of the employees have been furloughed. You know, we can't get to the powers that be to make these decisions. So I think that, I think remote learning and remote working, I should say, has been fairly well from what we've seen. We've talked to all of our customers. We've Zoomed some of our customers, and that's been great to have that personal connection. Quick story, I had to redo a contract for a customer, and not everybody has a scanner printer at home. So she said, would you take my word for it? You know, here's an email saying I will sign it when I can print it out. These are real struggles that we're seeing in that. We
Yes.
have, sorry?
Yes, we don't often think about the practicalities of home working as well, you know, and our existing procedures. Maribeth, if I can come back to the first point as well that you made, which is the realization of the different needs and the cancel, you know, the postponement behaviors of our clients. It strikes me that, you know, we have many different types of clients out there, but broadly they fit into the training or the smaller meetings or the conference categories. And maybe in the conference categories, you've got not-for-profits versus corporate initiated meetings. Are you seeing a difference? So, you know, one of the questions is do you know that we'll be asking later is it right to have a single approach to managing postponements and cancellations? But actually, are you seeing a difference in need given those different types of meetings or different types of clients?
Yes, because I think every meeting is different. Even if it is a corporate meeting, you know, is a board meeting of 12 people different than a training meeting of 50? Totally. It's people coming from one corporate area, let's say Boston, or it's everybody coming from all over the world. I was also on a panel discussion yesterday with a Facebook group, the National Meeting Planners, and we, you know, when will, no one has a crystal ball, first of all, but when will the time come when somebody's the trailblazer to say, we're holding this meeting, you know, we're going to have it in July and it's going to be okay. That's the tricky part. And then the conversation went further to possibly even the fact that different hubs of the United States and world will be ready for meetings more than others. I'm sure you're all aware in the States, I mean, what New York City looks like right now versus other major metropolitan areas, as well as obviously all over the world. So I think yes, it's meeting based, it's the type of meeting, it's the type of association versus corporate. But I can tell you that it's been difficult, but the customers have been so loyal. I mean, they want nothing more than to get back into their roles of planning and being with people. I mean, I think anybody on this whole call would probably agree. We all miss being with people and being in our regular jobs that we love so much. So I think they want nothing more than to get back. I think they want to be loyal to the IACC family from IACC bookings that I have and that we've done. All these customers are not saying, I'm not going back there. They're all saying, I'm coming, but I just need it to be the right time.
Right. Yeah, they're great points. Thank you, Maribeth. Nancy, I'm going to move into the next area that I'd love to get your perspective on, being Director of Sales and Marketing for a university conference center and with a, you know, with a you know, an extensive sales and marketing team. What advice could you offer our venues within IACC globally when setting the levels of allowed flexibility? And, you know, has this, when you talk about this, maybe you could include some thoughts around how your stance may have changed from last week to this week, and the importance of that or not, you know, when you talk it through.
Thanks, Mark. I think the reality of it is it's really changing minute by minute and situation by situation. You know, at the end of the day, I think each balance between the short-term decisions as it relates to how we're managing these business opportunities, as well as the long game, which are our long-term client relationships. And each one of these situations is very different to what Maribeth was saying. our success in here is really dependent on us treating each of these situations very independently. You know, a corporate meeting has very different needs and desires than a personal event, whether it's a wedding or a family reunion. You know, that's out of pocket money that you're putting somebody at extreme hardship to collect on, versus an association situation. Most associations are doing their meetings as part of their revenue generation to fund their operation, to do the good things that they do. IACC, us as an organization, is no different. We labored extensively, as Mark well knows, about what to do with our upcoming conference that was supposed to be next week, and ended up postponing the dates, because the reality of our world is that a big part of that meeting serves to fund the good we do out there in the meeting planning community, advocating for small meetings, advocating for the research and the education that we do. So those are important meetings for us to have, and you know, we've got a big push on for the reschedule of that as well. But I think the overall recommendation, as you're dealing with any of this at your property level, is taking a look at each one of these individually, but base that in understanding what your real business needs are. How does your pace look? What does your future look like? What is your fiscal year? What's the possible business impact? You know, what is your timeline for opening or closing? I think for most of us, there's probably zero business happening in April, and most of May is coming out, or if not, it hasn't already come out, is starting to hemorrhage. To assess your strategy and how you're going to deal with those requests and cancellations. I think in the short term, cancellations for April and May are easy conversations, because we know what we know now. And the conversations and cancellations for June, July, August, September, October, November, December get more complicated to have. And, you know, we're looking at things on a case-by-case basis, and having individual conversations. The two pieces that, again, are knowing what your business needs are and knowing what the impact is to your particular organization and operation. But as the sales team and the salesperson interacting with that, knowing what your client is up against and understanding that, having compassion for that, and having a realization for what they're faced with. You know, we have an interesting opportunity. We're, as a industry, are getting creamed. I mean, let's face it, for all of this beyond sucks, right? We've processed more cancellations in the last 20 minutes probably than we have in our entire careers, and it's painful. But the reality of it is finding that balance between what is appropriate to maintain and build that client relationship and what keeps us viable. I mean, we're fighting for our lives in many cases. And I wholeheartedly agree that we are going to come back stronger as an industry and as an organization, but that doesn't always mean that we are waiving everything, but it doesn't always mean we're charging everything. So the reality of it is, in each one of those situations, I think the first step is the contract, understanding your business parameters and needs, and then getting really into the nitty-gritty of what's going on with the client and what's feasible. What's feasible for them as far as rebooking or holding that event again in the near future, and looking at that timeline.
Nancy, that's great. And I'm going to open the question up to both you and to Cindy next, because it strikes me that one question I'm asking myself is, do we need to give our sales team greater empowerment and responsibility to make the decisions that maybe they may not have made in the past, because we had we could manage it, in terms of referring to our director of sales and marketing, general manager, etc. Have we got to ease the pipeline by empowering our sales teams in the today to make more of these decisions and being seen to be the partner to the client?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely a really good point. And I think it's really key and critical to empower them with understanding what's going on in the greater scope of things. One of know my gangs come up against is that clients want an immediate answer, and they're screaming for an immediate answer, and it's almost like a panicked kind of thing. But the reality of it is part of our role is to kind of slow that down and add some, bring some calm to that, because what I'm finding is when we're making decisions on the fly, they aren't really necessarily the best decision for the client or for us. And that if we take a little bit of a breath and breathe, and now I'm not saying don't get back to the client or don't be responsive. I'm absolutely saying be responsive, but sometimes it takes that getting away from that and assessing what we know, what we don't know, to get back in there and be able to create the solution together.
Right.
I look at it as collaborative. Always, that part has always been important to me.
Yeah, and that's so important. Cindy, how do we give our staff the power and the ability to be able to make more of these decisions themselves?
So to Nancy's point, and I love how you said, no, definitely responsive, knowing I'm like the queen of responsive. And this is really important. First of all, we have always encouraged every sales catering organization to do a morning lineup, just like we do in our office. When I ran the Ritz-Carlton Learning Institute, that was what helped us win the Malcolm Baldrige Award, not once, but twice, because every day in our team, 8:15, every hotel group we work with, everybody's used to pre-shifts in food and beverage and operations, but sales should be doing it, and they should still be doing it, even though we're not together. And every HR webinar I've been on has said that these are more important than ever because we're not all working together. And in the past, when you'd be in a hotel, everybody, I don't have time, I've got this, I've got a client, I've got that. So every day, to Nancy's point, it doesn't mean that you're not going to be reaching out and talking to these clients as they come in. But we all need to hear each other's stories so we can have more empowerment, even the vernacular, the verbiage we use, so that when we're saying to a client, we can't just say, I don't know. I've got to be able to talk to our lawyers. We've got to make sure they're not just making it, adding fuel to the fire. So doing a morning and a last at the end of the day lineup. So every day at 8:15 on our team, and then we're doing one again at 4:45 every day. And we're talking to the team. This is what went on, so everybody knows what to do. That's going to help with the empowerment. One of the things about empowerment is if you don't feel you're confident or you're knowledgeable about what to say, it's like the whole force majeure conversation. If you don't know what to say, you're afraid you're going to say the wrong thing. And the directors of sales and marketing are literally on phone calls, I'm sure, Nancy, I think, day in and day out with owners and discussions with lawyers. So I think the best way to not let them feel that they can't make a decision is give them the right information, give them the right tools, have them on calls with the legal teams, because there are some that are so flexible depending on your ownership of a hotel, and others that are just like, no, I want you to get we're not doing a refund, just move them, do this. So you just have to know where you're dealing.
And Maribeth, I'm sure that's exactly what you were referring to earlier when you talked about, when you are talking to somebody at the end of the phone that's empowered and able to help you progress and find a solution versus somebody who, it just does not have a say or is not able to, to work through a solution with you.
For sure, yeah. And I think that the customer, our customers, though, it's such a different time right now. I do think they understand that it takes a few more steps, but they're frustrated as well, I guess. It's both ends. It just takes longer to, to make a decision and to figure things out. But to Nancy's point, like you do need to weigh these because they're coming so fast and furious. And I will say, and I think I said earlier, for us right now, we are just really receiving postponements. For the most part. So, that's a great story. We didn't see those real short-term cancellations that never rescheduled. I think that's a tricky place to be for revenue. The other thing I wanted to mention too, that, I think as salespeople, and I know all of all of the IACC salespeople have been trained and on all this, but you know, we're going to have to be smarter with even space management. I just talked to a customer that lost a property that lost an April meeting, I guess it was, and she was really pretty excited about the fact that she said to the customer, the only dates really that are going to work are Labor Day week here in the States. So it's just being really smart about space management and patterns, even more so now moving forward, so we can maximize that space, because I really feel like training is going to come back fast and furious. I think that's one of the meeting types that are going to come back strong right away, and space is going to be at a premium. And gosh, wouldn't it be terrible to have to turn anything away at this point when you've lost, you know, a couple of months of revenue?
And that's a perfect segue into bringing Katie in. Thank you, Maribeth, because Katie, I've been ahead of this session looking at a lot of online forums around this discussion. If anyone wants to get inspiration in terms of knowing just how badly some venues can get it wrong, go on to MPI's forum, because you see lots of stories of you know, how postponement is or isn't managed well, and even to a point where meeting planners are posting general statements for internal documents within the major hotel chains to be able to prove the point that the flexibility isn't there, or they're just not getting the situation. But my question to you, and one that I've seen coming up more and more from our members, has been, you know, when considering that magic word postponement, so not cancellations, just how far should we be allowing clients to alter their bookings without that penalty? You know, what advice should we be offering our sales leads when managing those requests? Is it to the end of the summer? Is it to the end of 2020? Is it within the next 12 months? Or I've even heard, you know, it's okay as long as you book it by the end of 2021. There's so much, you know, so many different stances out there. What are you finding the right one? What's working for you?
Well, as Nancy and Maribeth had mentioned, you really have to take it on a case-by-case basis and for what type of group it is. If it's an association and it's an annual meeting, most likely they're just going to ask for a whole year. Corporations, we've been able to get them to push to the end of this year, but we are now starting to see groups that had rebooked from March into June and July are now questioning that as well. We are at Chubb allowing for a year, as long as they book within the year of the actual event date is what we're allowing most groups. But again, it is on a case-by-case basis, and you have to work with your client. You can't alienate them. You don't want them to feel that, you know, they're not going to be able to come back, because now they're not going to have the money to be able to pull something off if it's a kind of open to the public type of event. But definitely to just be empathetic in the beginning. I think that's what everybody needs right now. And then to work with each other. Again, space is going to be crazy in the fall, and we need to make sure that what we're rebooking and what we're going to be putting in there for new business is going to make sense for both us and the clients.
So with empathy and heart, but by digging deeper and understanding what some of the, you know, the elements of the decision making are within the client. So whether they are willing to put the meeting on, but with added flexibility over attrition or numbers. You know, if you work as a venue with them, not knowing how many will show up to the meeting, they'd still like to have the meeting versus we can't do it and we have to move to this time next year because of our sponsors, our exhibitors, you know, our customers, or, you know, so they're wise words. Thank you. We can get deeper, and, you know, I'm going to open it up now to Kate to see if there's any questions, you know, you're seeing as a thread, Kate, there that, you know, that we can ask this panel on before we go into the last two looking forward questions. Kate, I think I've unmuted you, so you just need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, we've got a question coming, really just echoing people's positivity about business coming back. But the question is, does anyone feel sort of the opposite, in fact, that companies won't have the money to spend? and whether we should look into sort of developing the online webinars, which obviously has been happening sort of in the last couple of weeks.
Okay, great question. So panelists, we can be as positive as we want to be. We can, you know, but that's a really important component. But is the reality something different? Are we going to be impacted? Not, you know, once the travel restrictions have been lifted and people can travel, will they travel, or will the economic factors start to have a greater impact? And if they are, if we're going to see a downturn in the coming months and the next year or two, should we be considering more, you know, and I know this isn't our area of expertise, but, you know, as organizations and sales teams, should we be asking our properties to be giving us more hybrid solutions that prepare for this? And I'm happy, all channels are open to the panel, whoever would like to talk to this point.
My take on that would be both. I mean, here's the reality. I do think and agree with what Maribeth and Cindy has said. Like it's gonna, and Katie, it's gonna come back. And I think there is going to be a pent up demand for training, which positions IACC properties in a really, really awesome place right now. Do I think it's going to look a little different? Absolutely. And that hybrid opportunity for those that do have travel concerns, or as things linger, you know, we are expecting, you know, a longer trajectory on this than I think was initial. So I think both and. But I also would encourage to start looking at the industries that are doing well. There are some companies that are doing really well right now. I know my brother-in-law, as an example, is in technology, and with the demand for people to be working from home and those kinds of resources, he is busier than he has ever been. And I'm sure we can think of a lot of examples of other industries that are doing exceedingly well right now, and we'd be well placed talking to those organizations about their future needs, because there will be pent up demand.
Construction, pharma,
Yep.
all of that. Insurance, banking
Yep.
is, you know, our banking customers they're still going strong, investors, all of that.
Absolutely.
Good
Yeah,
point.
definitely. I've reached out to our AV team to put together some packages for video conferencing, teleconferencing, webcasting. So we have that ready to rock and roll as soon as everybody starts coming back online. So I would encourage you guys to reach out to your AV teams, get stuff put together so you have the answers to the questions before the clients ask.
Yeah.
And I think another item that we're talking about a lot about recently is the virtual meetings. I do think that those will be prevalent within the next month or two. There's several companies that are well-versed, Brazen and a couple of other ones. Obviously, we want the real in-person meetings, but if you do want to talk to your customers about it as being, you know, a great way to build a relationship further in the short term, there are virtual meetings, companies that are doing virtual meetings that they can help you out with that.
We even as an association, as IACC, you know, we've got the conference coming up at the end of June, and we're absolutely putting in a hybrid option. So it's going to be, I think it's going to be part of our everyday world. So to Katie's point and Maribeth's point, getting with your AV teams to make sure you're positioned well.
Yeah, and I also think too, it's a great idea, Katie, on that same thread, to make sure that you do have a really great virtual tour of your property, because I think, you know, people are going to look at that. They have some downtime now, as much as, you know, they're dealing with cancellations, postponements. They're working from home. They have time to take a 10-minute virtual tour of the property, and maybe, you know, come up with a fun marketing video that shows and showcases your property until they can physically get there. And who knows, what, another month or so.
That's a really good point. Thank you all for that. Thank you for that question. Kate, what I'm going to ask you to do is we'll do some more Q&A at the end of the 40 minutes. So if there are any other questions around that, but what I'd like to really do now is to start to take us looking forward. You know, so we know we've got to build the VCMP and the VDMP and the VDDR. So all of that, you know, is a given now, so we can get busy with that. But Nancy, Katie, you know, what I'm hearing is that our sales teams are going to have to adapt, are needing to do things differently. By the way, we learned, just because of one of the questions that came out, we learned last year the power of working with like a platform like Certify to take that contract signing 100% online, so no printing out, no PDFs, and invoice handling. So I moved to that last year. It's been a godsend. So if anyone is dealing with that, being a remote worker, take a look at something like Certify. But what needs to change in terms of the compositions, the focus of our sales teams, proactive and reactive? I'll open that out to Nancy and Katie, and then Cindy, I'm going to ask you to start to bring that together in terms of how we're going to win that harder to get business in the future and how we're going to go about it.
Okay,
So,
perfect.
yeah, I think for many of us, you know, our sales teams look a little different right now, and many of us might, you know, if we still have teams that are working, we're really lucky. And one of the conversations we've had in our office is, as much as it's business unusual, it is business as usual, because the reality of it is now is the time to start the building blocks for our future. And for those of us that are still working and have the benefit of doing that, the way we can honor that, the best way we can honor that, is by being productive. So production goals, sales activity goals, making sure we're still out there touching, feeling clients, not necessarily, you know, a little distance in between, but making sure that we are staying in touch is critical. And that isn't necessarily calling for their meeting needs as much as checking in, because here's a real reality. Their travel bans and how they're approaching things for the future are important for how we make decisions about bringing our properties back online, bringing our teams back. So being in touch with what's happening out there is critically important, as well as from a relationship building perspective. I mean, we're a human people business.
Yeah.
It's a great opportunity to check in with your people and how they're doing emotionally. And as we're all cloistered, right? We're losing, as Maribeth talked earlier, we're losing that human touch. This is our opportunity to reach out and be with people, because that's our business, right? That's what we do. That's our passion. And in order for us to continue to do that, we have a prime opportunity, because people have more time for us now, frankly.
And they do, and we absolutely know that. You know, today we've got 100 people on our webinar. We should have had more. Our limit capped us, and it shouldn't have. We went to 500. So we disappointed a few, which kills me to say it. But we delivered a webinar earlier this week. 1,200 meeting planners joined that webinar. So we have time. We can learn our way to victory. So if any of you are thinking that, you know, our customers don't have time to get on and learn and talk to us, etc., that's not the case. I've seen it firsthand. It's a really good point. They have the time, and we have that opportunity now where we maybe didn't have it when they were 1 week away from running their next meeting. Thank you for that. Cindy, if I may ask you to jump in on this topic.
So this is a perfect opportunity to do all the things that we always said we didn't have time to do. And that's why keeping the salespeople working, keeping them engaged, to Nancy's point, customers are talking. Getting somebody like Maribeth on the phone now, it's going to be easier than it might have been when she's in the middle of running a huge meeting. So a few things I want to just leave everybody with. Be very deliberate in your messaging. As you go out there and start talking to your clients, you're not, you know, obviously, as Nancy said, you're not calling, hi, I just thought I'd check in. No, but you're saying, you know, what can I do for you? In some cases, even running this Zoom meeting right here, there are some small meeting planners, some very independent planners that don't even know, I mean, they haven't done things like this. So you could offer to say, you know, I could actually facilitate or host your Zoom meeting with some of your clients if they're independent. What can I do for you? I think that whole idea of a value proposition that we've always worked on needs to be per client. You know, your bigger corporations are going to need something different. Your customers that are doing training, maybe you could be on some of their training calls and take notes, because they don't have any admin. Maybe their admin was actually furloughed. So you could say, I could take notes, I could do that. These are things that are going to impact your relationship with that customer. You don't want to hunker down. I mean, yes, we're all hunkered down. Every day, I've told my team, we get up, we get ready for work, we put our makeup on, we come to work, we're looking at each other, because honestly, it's a mentality. And I know that from all the law firms we work for. The casual Friday started to kind of suck some of the energy out. So it doesn't mean you have to be dressed up in a suit and ready to go. It just means you're present. The more you hunker away and don't connect, you should be putting things on LinkedIn, positive messaging, the more the competition is going to be very happy. They'll be very happy, because this is your opportunity to come out of this better than you went into it. And that is the truth. Every crisis we've ever been in, we have seen unbelievable success coming out of it, financial as well as even productivity. This is where the cream does rise to the top, and you need to be that cream. So I would just say, this is not false hope. I believe persistence is going to be the only thing that gets us through. I believe the people that are going to be the best are the ones that continue the engagement, continue with, here's what we're doing, these are some ideas we have, using everything you've heard today. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Mark.
I'm going to turn it back to you immediately, though, because when we talk about USPs, I think I'm hearing that the USPs are changing. So, what made us a great venue yesterday is not necessarily what's going to resonate in the future. And by that, what I mean is I'm hearing that, when we look at our venues through the lens of a meeting planner returning and bringing a meeting back for the first time after all the restrictions that's been in place, maybe should we be looking at our venues in the context of whether they are lower risk? So I'll give examples. If we are a venue that is not open to the general public and only small groups, or if we are a venue that can self-contain some of our smaller meetings and groups and have their dining and their meeting facilities in a dedicated area. If our operational teams are already planning changes to food service styles, so when we're looking at buffets where they were self-service in the past, but now they're going to be served, and there's going to be protective wear, that wasn't there before. Is this an opportunity for us to tailor our USPs and anticipate what the client's what's going to be important to the client in the future?
Yeah. And to your point, I mean, how many, and Maribeth knows this better because she's the client, the feature dumping that has gone on for so long is, which I've always said is a pure joke. Now it's all going to be the same, because everyone's going to go, no more buffets. I mean, years ago it was like, get the sneeze screen out. I mean, like, the fact that we're going to be cleaner and better and more thoughtful, the fact that we're going to have hand sanitizer everyone's going to do the same thing. So to me, the USP is going to be you, the salesperson, what I can provide Maribeth, the client, what I can give her and her group. Everyone is going to level the playing field. When they come back, every single hotel, conference center, resort that is out there, from all of our discussions with some of the biggest and brightest minds with some of the large hotel companies, say corporate travel is going to hit first. It's going to hit in May. A lot of these corporate hotels are going to open back up, but they're going to open with some of these thoughtful points, okay? And then the resorts, anywhere where there's outside, people can have fresh air, where there are the dedicated spaces, which is so IACC, absolutely. But remember, you'll still be then competing same. Yeah. So what your USP's got to be is what you are actually creatively doing differently for some of these people as they come out of it. And I think that's going to be, again, there is so much speculation of what this is going to look like, but you and I, all of us in the hospitality industry, and I own a restaurant, and I can tell you right now, we are a USDA prime steakhouse that had to turn into takeout. We had to go buy, we don't do takeout. And so, when people are saying like, I'd like the prime bone-in filet, and we're like, we had to go buy things to put that in. And, so now we're doing it where you get your bottle of wine. I mean, we had to get so creative. And this is what you're going to see. People are going to change some of the ways they do things. We didn't even know how many takeout things that are already out there that are actually, safe, and the way you touch, and it doesn't, this was all available anyway, but nobody really paid attention to it, because if you didn't finish your dinner in a restaurant, they brought it, they put it in a bag in a carton and brought it over to your table, and 90% of the people sat it on the floor waiting to go. There's going to be so much things that are going to change, and it will be up to you individually as salespeople and giving operations feedback and having those thoughtful conversations that will make the difference.
They're great points. And if I give you my order now, can I have it delivered for this evening?
Yeah, exactly. Especially that bone-in ribeye.
There we go. I'm in.
The other thing I would suggest too is reaching out to your vendors and your partners. A lot of people, we're so concerned right now of what we're losing and keeping our clients happy. But, the people who help us do these things really need to be touched on too. They've lost business themselves. A lot of them are small business owners. So reach out just to let them know you're there. It'll go a long way, and they'll be the ones that'll probably call you first when they have a rebooking or when they're looking to send a client our way.
Yeah.
And that's a perfect example, because Cisco, US Foods, Gordon Foods, every one of the suppliers, they've got all the food, by the way. They've got all the toilet paper. They've got it all, because there is no shortage on any of that, okay? There's not a run on a Cisco truck that's going down the freeway. And they're going to the restaurants that are already open. And that's why we set up a market. And those are the things that some of you can get a little more creative. If you're in a more area, reach out, just like Katie said, to your vendors. PSAV, which we do a lot of training with them. I've said, look, you guys, you could help us with some of these virtual meetings. We can help you. And they are figuring out ways to work better together. So that is a very good point.
Thank you, Cindy. On that note, Kate, I'm going to open it up for some closing questions, and we can continue for a little while, but I'd like to make sure we at least get some of the key ones that you've spotted. Hello, Kate.
Thanks, Mark.
Perfect. Thank you.
So no recent questions. If anyone would like to pose a question to the panel, please use your chat box in the right-hand side of your screens. Just a question that came up earlier prior to the webinar from one of our members was, how do we go about encouraging people to come back to our venues?
Okay, well, Cindy, you talked about putting your best foot forward and being the strong partner and having a really strong relationship. If we assume that, as we saw after 9/11, there was a definite pattern to returning custom. We saw smaller meetings coming back before we saw larger meetings. We saw critical meetings where it was business critical to get the business back up, so senior leadership. And then we saw regional, then we saw national, then we went global. That sort of was a pattern that we saw evolving. If we assume that the same pattern evolves, what would be your tips if you are really you're wanting to talk to those organizations that are starting to think now about getting their A team together, their small teams, to redefine their strategy for their business? How would you pick up the phone to them?
Okay, so the whole idea is that you're in touch with all these customers. This is a time to get into your CRM. And this is where I got so frustrated with some hotel leaders that, furloughed their people, but didn't let them be on their CRM. And furlough is different than laid off. Furlough is different than fired. Furloughed means you're going to come back. But the hotels that have kept their salespeople going allow them to get on their Delphi or Salesforce, whatever it is, and start talking to these customers and start saying, you know what, I'm going to be available to talk to you at the moment you're ready. I want to be able to look at the date. So one of the things we're working with a couple of our hotel clients is, how do we, and this goes to that space and holding the space. Let's not wait. You're a valuable customer to me. I know that you're going to go ahead and have this meeting. So let's get those October dates booked before they're gone, and reaching out, because I think unlike 9/11, there was a different fear factor in 9/11.
Yeah.
Okay, it was a totally different deal. And at 9/11, we saw it come back slow because corporations could not mandate. Corporate travel restrictions went away differently. There was all kinds of things that were different. This is going to be like hallelujah. And there are going to be the people that are so germophobic anyway. I have friends that are like, I wouldn't even fly ever. I've never flown. I mean, they're the ones that would take a bus to go where they're going. I'm like, I mean, their own bus, you know what I'm saying? And so I think it's going to be a huge influx of people that say, hallelujah, get me on the plane and I'm getting to that meeting. And I think that because they're not afraid, this is a difference. So I think you're going to see, I don't know if we can do it exactly the same. The key is that you're out there talking to these customers. Call me, let's talk. I'm available. Here's my cell. Because you and I all know, and everyone on this panel knows, without a doubt, we have had absolutely a lack of connection with our customers for so long. It has been this click, 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 click. Oh, I can't get a hold of anybody. Nancy knows. Katie, if you hear one salesperson, well, I mean, I can't talk to customers. They don't want to talk. All they want to do is text and email. Well, I can tell you right now, they're talking. And you get them on the phone, you build that relationship, and you will be known for that when we come out. And I think that is going to be a big difference. I think the human connection, and I've said human to human, H to H all the time, that's going to make a difference. And that's how you're going to be getting that business and getting it rolling.
Incredibly wise, positive, motivating words. Thank you, Cindy. And thank you, Nancy, Maribeth, Katie, for joining us and joining the panel today. It's been great. We've addressed some of what's important. I have a feeling there's a ton of questions in the chat box because I've been watching them reeling past, which we're going to go away, we're going to clean, we're going to look, we're going to share with you and share with the group. I know there's an opportunity for us to be able to take this now and get into some more specific topics and some discussions around that with your help, Cindy.
Can I just answer one question popped up that I want to make sure, because I said furlough. Somebody said, you know, they're using furlough so they don't have to pay us. That's 100% right. And when they furlough you, it's not mandatory that you actually are having to work and all of that. I get it. What we're telling, I did an entire webinar 3 days ago with all furloughed people. And they did it on their own email, their own personal Gmail, the whole bit. And what we said is, don't use this as an excuse. If they furloughed you and you can't have access because legally there's some things with money and pay and all that, then get on LinkedIn, connect with your customers personally, because that's your LinkedIn. Don't use that as an excuse, because this is where you think like a contractor. Think like an independent entrepreneur, and you will be better as we go forward. I promise you. And if you want to reach out to me individually, I can share with you how to do that better. Thank you, Cindy. So in World War II, we had to dig for victory. This time we're having to learn for victory, right? That's right. And well, remember, World War II, you couldn't buy a car, but Ford never stopped advertising. They always said, there's a Ford in your future, and look what happened. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I'm going to take the opportunity now to just highlight that next week we have 2 webinars. So we have Cindy, who will be leading us on Tuesday. Do join that webinar. We will also have another a week on Friday, which is going to be looking at, in exactly the same format as today, operational considerations. So all of those colleagues that you've got that are sat in their homes, you know, nearby, and they're looking after the food and beverage, the operations, the general management, let them know, get them to register, and because we'll continue this. Then we go into people, then we'll be going into technology and looking at some of those online platforms. So we will keep pushing the content, pushing the education for as long as you will give us a platform to do so. On that note, Kate, I'll let you wrap up and cover anything that I may have missed.
Thank you, Mark. As Mark said, we have 2 sessions running next week. I'll send links to both of those sessions with the recording of this session today, later this afternoon. So take a look at that. And all remains to say a big thank you for joining all of us. And we look forward to welcoming you all back on another session with IACC and our industry colleagues. Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye.
Stay strong.
Safe.
Have a great day.